Folks, welcome back. You're watching the CBN News channel. A well-known YouTube family is coming under fire for placing their adopted son in a different home 2 years after bringing him home from China. Micah and her husband James live in Ohio and have been sharing their life on YouTube since 2014 with over 1 million subscribers between their two channels. Well, in 2016, the couple began documenting their journey through the adoption process as they raised money to bring their soon-to-be son home. When they found out that he had special needs, they shared how God worked in their hearts to continue with the adoption. After bringing their son Huxley to the States 2 years later, he was officially diagnosed with autism in September of 2019. Well, in an emotional update that has received massive criticism, the family shared a video this week announcing they have placed Huxley in a different home.
We've never wanted to be in this position, and we've been trying to get his needs met and help him out as much as possible. It's really hard, isn't it? We truly love him.
There's not an ounce of our body that doesn't love Huxley with all of our being. There wasn't a minute that I didn't try our hardest, and I think what Jim's trying to say is that after multiple assessments, after multiple evaluations, numerous medical professionals have felt that he needed a different fit and that his medical needs, he needed more.
The couple said they had stayed silent until now to give Huxley privacy and for legal reasons. They also said he has now been placed with, quote, the perfect match. My next guest has worked for several years with orphans and vulnerable children around the world. Karen Springs is a native of Washington State and spent 14 years living in Ukraine, where, among other things, she became a passionate advocate for adoption and helped dozens of families through the adoption process. Well, Karen has a new book out this week. It's called Adoption Through the Rearview Mirror, Learning from Stories of Heartache and Hope. Karen, welcome to the show. Micah and her husband got a lot of backlash for their decision to give up Huxley. How common is this?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's an incredibly complex issue, and adoption, the term in the adoption community is adoption disruption or rehoming, putting the child in a different home. And I think in their situation, it's even more interesting and unique because they chose to be YouTube stars and put their children on the platform. So now people were wondering where their son went, but it's not something that's talked about, but there are many instances when children are placed in other homes and the reasons vary. So this one is hard to comment on because I don't know the depth of the situation, but anytime a child has to go into another home is a very sad situation for sure.
Yeah. You interviewed 63 adoptive families for this new book of yours. What was your goal in telling their stories?
Well, I think that as with social media, everyone tends to promote the beautiful parts of adoption and promote it in a way that everyone wants to do it. And even this woman, this YouTube star, she talked, got these followers about how she was doing this international adoption. But then I think what happens is it gets hard and suddenly people don't know what to do. And so I wanted to give voice to the harder side of adoption, but also show how God works in that.
What were the biggest challenges for the families you interviewed?
I think that some of the biggest challenges, one of them that I focus on in the book is about the integration of the biological children that they had in their home with the newly adopted children. I think sometimes people glamorize, they think, oh, we're getting a new sibling and we're getting a sister or we're getting a brother. And the kids also have just a rose-colored glasses of what getting a new sibling will mean. But often families aren't prepared to the depth of the history of trauma that a child has had, or all the ways that their family is going to forever change for better or worse because they've added a new child to their home. So I deal a lot with why that transition is hard. And also from the advice that of the families I interviewed, they share about things they wish they'd done differently, or just encouragement for how families can better integrate their children once they come home.
Yeah, when you had your home in Kyiv, Ukraine, the capital city, you started this ministry to invite families who were coming in, who were planning to adopt from Ukraine, and give them a safe place and kind of help them through the process. And now you come back to the United States and you crisscrossed the country interviewing all these folks. What was that whole process like?
Oh, it was amazing. As you mentioned, I spent 14 years living in Ukraine and, had made trips back to the U.S. to visit family. But this time I got in my car and literally drove across the entire United States, and it was intimidating at first, and I was nervous. I hadn't seen some of these families in many years, and here I was walking into their homes and saying, will you share with me the vulnerable parts of your story, the parts you don't talk about on Facebook, the parts that even maybe some close friends don't know about, and will you trust me with your story to share it? So it was an amazing and sweet experience to reconnect with these families who I had first met in Ukraine.
What are you hoping that readers will gain from reading your book?
I think my biggest hope was that families would feel that they're not alone. I already heard back from an early reader who's an adoptive mom, and she's going through just a hard season with her daughter. And she said as she read it, it was just like she felt heard and she felt seen. And it was that reminder that God is also still writing the story. A lot of the end of the book just kind of focuses on what does it mean to have a rear view perspective, but recognize that you're still going forward. So you have to look back at where you've come from, but ultimately God is still writing these stories. And so we have to trust that he is working. And so that is my hope, that families will feel heard and understood, but also recognize that God is still at work.
Yeah. What should people know about adoption?
Oh, that's such a big question. I think one of the terms we use is it's broken and it's beautiful. And some people experience one of those words more than the other. And I wish you could say that every broken story had all these beautiful elements, but some stories are just really hard. So, but I also believe that children deserve to be in family. And so for that reason, as believers, we can enter prepared. We need to be prepared, but to welcome kids into our homes, be prepared to parent them well. But every child deserves a loving family. And that's also the heart of this book.
Yeah, terrific. Well, we have an organization here at CBN called Orphans Promise, and they have clearly moved away from this idea of funding orphanages and now insisting that children be involved and be part of a loving family. Karen, thank you so much for coming on the show, and congratulations on the book. By the way, you can find out more about adoption through the review mirror, learning from stories of heartache and hope at Karen's website, karensprings.com.